So let's have a listen now to what Kelvin Thompson is saying about this enterprise migration agreement.
I wanted to talk this morning about enterprise migration agreements. I do not support enterprise migration agreements. In the first instance, they are a confession of failure in regard to our permanent migrant worker program. Since the mid-1990s, the permanent migrant worker program has been multiplied by more than 5 times. This program is supposed to be meeting the needs of the mining boom. It is not doing that. In fact, more than 50% of the people who come here under the permanent migrant worker program end up in either Sydney or Melbourne competing with unemployed Australians for work. If the permanent migrant worker program was successful, why is it that we turn to temporary migrant worker programs such as this one? The permanent migrant worker program should be properly targeted to meet the kind of needs that are being expressed here. Secondly, if we go down the path of enterprise migration agreements, we will end up with a situation where we have foreign companies using foreign workforces to send our resources in foreign ships to foreign countries for the use and enjoyment of foreign customers. Now, this may be the idea of some people about how we spread the benefits of the mining boom, but it's not my idea. If this is in the national interest, I'll go he for Tiggy. The third issue is that enterprise migration agreements come at the expense of Indigenous Australians. We've seen recently a debate between Andrew Forrest and Gina Rinehart, where Andrew Forrest has said he wants to employ Indigenous Australians on mining projects. Gina Rinehart wants to bring in foreign workers. Andrew Forrest is right, Gina Rinehart is wrong. But if we go down the path of enterprise migration agreements, we'll get the Gina Rinehart outcome at the expense of Indigenous Australians. Under her proposal, we're getting 1,700 migrant workers and 100 Aboriginal jobs. It should be the other way around.
Government is responsible for training. Isn't the situation where people are saying, I've got this massive project to build, construction, not operate, but I don't have anyone to build it. Where is the government in terms of the training of people like Indigenous people you talk about?
Well, the government is engaged in training programs, but it seems to me that the objective of these training programs is undermined if you bring in workers from outside. If we don't bring in workers from outside, we will have the training that people like Andrew Forrest say we need, and we will get outcomes in which Indigenous Australians and other Australians get the jobs.
But isn't the issue that it needs to be built now and there isn't anyone to build it?
When you say,
I'm asking
yes,
you.
yes. When you say it needs to be built now, I think that this suggests a lack of faith in market forces. If we pay people enough, they will come and these projects will be built. If this takes another year or two, then frankly, so what? These resources have been here for hundreds of thousands of years. All the historical evidence suggests that they will increase in value over time and that they will be worth more to Australians over time than they are now. I am highly confident that these resources projects will proceed and that labour resources are there, provided Gina Rinehart and others are prepared to pay people appropriate rates to experience the hardships of the Pilbara, are prepared to engage in training of Indigenous Australians and other Australians so that they can do the jobs that are needed.
What should the EMAs and this one in particular?
I think that the government should not proceed with enterprise migration agreements. I think that we should be putting the effort into training and skilling Australian workers, particularly in this instance, Indigenous Australian workers.
What should the... He will raise this at the caucus tomorrow. Will you do the same thing?
Well, I don't canvass what goes on in caucus. It's the chair of caucus who has that privilege.
Why doesn't the jobs board...
the whole way the government has handled this
We've
Well-
got background then, you've got one side, ministers saying, you know, they did this, the other side saying they did that. How it must be very dispiriting.
Well, I'm concerned with the policy question, Mark, rather than the questions of process. It's been my view for quite some time that both our permanent migrant worker program and our temporary migrant worker programs are too large, and I think that what we're seeing here is effectively a confession of failure, that the permanent migrant worker program is not delivering the outcomes that it's supposed to.
It's been said that the Prime Minister insisted on this jobs board as a condition of the EBA. Why aren't you convinced that the Prime Minister's idea of the jobs board will protect Australian workers, will ensure Australian workers are involved?
I'm supportive of the idea of the jobs board. Indeed, I mentioned it in a speech in Parliament over a year ago when I talked about issues to do with skilled migration and the fact that the Manufacturing Workers Union had set up their own skills register and were proposing the idea of a jobs board, which I think is a good idea. I'm certainly of the view that it is a good idea. But unions are saying that there are abuses in relation to the temporary migrant worker programs, the 457 visa programs, and that they are not able to achieve an outcome where those workers are being paid in the same way that Australian workers are being paid. I had one union leader mention to me a case in the Pilbara where his advice is that Chinese workers are being paid 50 to 60% of the Australian rate, that he has raised it with the relevant officials but has not been able to get a satisfactory outcome. So people are concerned that if we have the migrant workers being brought in, that they will be exploited. There have been many examples of 457 visas being exploited.
Do you have people in your electorate or people you know just generally who would love to be able to go and work on Gina Reinhardt's project in a fly-in, fly-out basis?
I think that if people are paid appropriate wages and given appropriate training, they will come. I've certainly had people in my electorate contacting me to say that they are interested in getting work in particular industries like IT, but in fact are not able to get that work because companies are bringing in people as either under the permanent migrant worker program or the temporary migrant worker program at their expense.
Labor MP Kelvin Thompson there live, that was a few minutes ago at Federal Parliament in Canberra, not happy with that government decision to bring in foreign workers to man some mines that Gina Reinhardt is building in WA.